You are live.
I'm live, and welcome to February coaching. Buckle up, secure your seatbelt. I spent about 3 hours going through and commenting on all your questions. I thought you had great questions. I hope I have great answers for you. It's juicy. There's a lot in here to dig into, so I think you're going to really enjoy it. I wanted to tell you, okay, so once Alexis gets back in seat, or Maria, if you're there, the only thing I don't know for today is what the sale code is. I don't remember if it changed today or if it's the same as yesterday, so can you guys confirm? So something really special that we just unpacked from Tucson and we put in stock today, because I know you guys are pendulum freaks and I am too. But I want to show you first. These are spinning Merkaba 7 chakra pendulums that have natural stones all the way around, including natural citrine. This one's a really live one, actually. And what's cool is the Merkaba spins inside. So these are on sagegoddess.com right now. They're $19 before your discount code, FIRE18. Aren't they fun? So it's like super under $20 for, and the quartz is really beautiful. It's really clear quartz, 7 chakra stones. So we unpacked these and I was like, these have got to just go for everybody now. And then because we're doing that, I thought I would do a fun little enter to win for you too. So I will post this in the Soul Shift Facebook group. Don't tell anybody about this enter to win. This is really special because I had never seen a Skolasite perfume bottle. So this we just unpacked from Tucson too. That's a Synergy 12 perfume bottle made in India. Isn't it gorgeous? So I'll put a post up in Soul Shift when we're done here. Isn't it beautiful? As I throw it on the floor. Isn't that gorgeous? Skolasite perfume bottle. Even the little cap is all etched. Isn't that beautiful? I don't even know what the value of that is. It's crazy. I've never seen a Skolasite perfume bottle. I brought 3 home from Tucson. 2 are going to go into a live gemstone sale coming up, and then this one I'm going to gift to one of you. Isn't that fun? So anyway, don't leave yet because I want you to stay for coaching, but if you happen to shop, we're going to let this run through tomorrow at midnight, so we'll announce the winner of this enter to win on Thursday. Isn't that cool? You can't find the pendulums? Team SG will link for you. You don't need to find them now anyway. I don't want you to go buy a pendulum. I want you to hang out with me for an hour, but then after we're done, if you want a pendulum, they're there. Aren't they fun? This one was really singing to me. I mean, it's like going, going, going. It's very active. You are very active. Sometimes when they just like go, go, go. Anyway, I thought that was a really fun pendulum. Oh, it's under pendulums, not new. Team SG, can you move that listing to under new and just listed so it's not hidden under pendulums? That way it'll be easier to find. That's a little weird. Maybe because it was kind of a quick thing today from Tucson because we unpacked it and I was like, that's kind of cool. Let's show them that. Okay, but stay here for now. So is there anybody who's new to coaching? Anybody who hasn't been through one of our coaching integration sessions? It used to be called integration. Now I call it coaching because it is coaching. It gives me a chance. You know, what I miss most about my corporate work was coaching. I really loved coaching people, offering perspectives to help shift their consciousness. But I didn't want to be in corporate work anymore. So this allows me to still feel like I'm in a coaching capacity, but more in a metaphysical context. Although a lot of the things that I end up sharing in these sessions really do come out of that training. So Siren of the Void hasn't been to coaching before, which is really exciting. Tiffany Park, so welcome. Really excited for those of you who haven't been through a coaching before. Roots of the Soul hasn't been live with coaching. Yasim is new. Francis is new. Kavitha is new. Yeah, Cindy's saying she loves being a coach too. I really do. You know, leadership is what my PhD is in, and I have a real passion for helping people lead better lives. And that took a lot of different forms. I used to be a leadership professor in a business school in San Diego at the University of San Diego. And then when I left academic life to move into the private sector, I was a Fortune 50 coach for an organization called the Corporate Executive Board in Alexandria, Virginia. I lived in San Francisco, but I commuted to Alexandria, Virginia once a month. And I loved that. I traveled all over the world, really just coaching C-suite executives, the top tier executives at most of the big companies in the world. And it was a really awesome job. It was just very, very stressful, which is why I left it and ultimately wanted to pursue my soul work, which is this. But I still feel like I made a lot of headway in those days. And what's interesting is a lot of what I used to teach people as a coach is very similar to what I teach you, but with you I use the woo-woo words. With them I tried to translate it into Muggle talk. So I was still talking about energy, I was still talking about frequency, I was still talking about all the things that we talk about here, but I couldn't use those words. So I found a way of talking about energy using non-energy words, but it translated still. And honestly, a lot of executives believe in what we do. They just are not as out of the closet as we are, but they still get that everything is energy at the end of the day, right? So anyway, I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad to be here with you. Yeah, it's always a translation, and some things do get lost in translation. But at the end of the day, it's like a good executive is somebody who has presence, who has purpose, and passion. Those are the 3 ingredients you have to be a good leader. You have to have presence. You can't be the kind of person who walks into a room and nobody notices, because you got to lead. You have to have purpose. You have to know what you're doing, what your vision and your mission is, and how you connect to the work that you're doing. And you have to have passion. You have to give a shit. You have to really want to make a difference. And if you take any one of those things away, you don't have a leader. Those are like my sort of baseline criteria. Right? Okay, so I'm going to dive right in. I'm gonna do a little honey badgering in some cases where, I don't have to give you lengthy explanations. Some of you actually, there was one person who I felt like the answer to her question was in the question. I kind of feel like what she needed was to process her question. And by the end of it, my comment back to her was, I think you answered this for yourself, which is always the goal, right? A lot of us actually do when we allow ourselves to externally process or journal or dialogue. A lot of us end up answering our own questions if we can pay attention and be looking for the answer, right? Like a lot of times the answer is embedded in the question. You guys like the honey badger? Okay, let's do this then. I'm into it. So I'm going to start right off. There's a sort of a little like cadre of questions under the subtitle of priestessing. So Shali got us kicked off and asked, how do you continue to priestess? This is a great one. When you're grieving. I don't know if I can do this. Just found out a coworker passed. Okay. And my answer for Shali is the same as my answer for Tammy Martin. It's the same as my answer for Tabitha Bauer. It is the same as my answer for somebody else. Lori Valdez. So what I would like to recommend is all of you should kind of listen up to this answer, because it's going to, no matter what your question is, it's going to kind of answer your question, even if it's in an indirect way. So what I said to Shali, which applies to multiple of you, is you have to ask yourself, what is your role in all of your relationships? What is your role? And sometimes with family, we do this, what some people call mission creep or blurring of the boundaries. We start, because it's family, especially if you're an older sibling. I'm an older sibling, but it happens in every family dynamic, whether you're older. I also have an older brother, so I'm a younger and an older sibling because I'm the middle child. We start confusing our purpose in our relationships to a point where, or an extent where, we start thinking that we are, or even subconsciously, that we are responsible for other people's behavior, other people's outcomes. Candace is the oldest, right? That is, I'm really trying to think about a relationship in your life where you are absolutely responsible for another person's behavior. I mean, when you're a parent, if your kid breaks something in a store, which was always my thing, because my kids are very energetic. So I would take them places and it's like, oh, look at this, boom, Your kid drops something in a store, you're responsible for that. Your brother or sister does something wrong in life. So what I like to do, instead of going into relationships and behaving as though I'm responsible for people, okay, and I'll give you another example of what that looks like. I like to call myself the informed observer or the compassionate witness. The informed observer, that's actually a technical term that comes out of research, actually, qualitative research in academic settings. When you're a qualitative researcher and you're observing people or you're doing a study, your role is called the informed observer. You know what's happening, you know what the experiment is, but you can't intervene because otherwise you'll taint the outcome of the study. So no matter how hard it is, you have to shut up. You can't get involved. You can't ask too many questions because you're going to interrupt the data and you're going to render it irrelevant. Okay, so in qualitative research, we call that the informed observer. In more metaphysical work, we call it the compassionate witness. But it's really, really hard to watch people make mistakes. Now, again, that's an ego thing when you're like, oh, it's so hard to watch her make a mistake. And part of me is like, how do you know what they're doing is a mistake? And you might say, well, it's not good for them, or it's harming her, or it's taking her off track, or it's, you know, it's making her quit school or whatever. And what I like to remind people is, it's especially hard when it's your child, but even when it's not your child, what I like to remind people is everybody's here with a contract. They are here to experience certain things in the very limited amount of time that they have. And if you or if I go around saving people from what we think are mistakes or trying to transmute what we think is bad behavior or wrong choices or any of that, we are so not on track because it's not what we're here to do. You know, and with your children, even with your kids, you know what I mean? It's like, we have to be good guides and good stewards, but at the end of the day, even they came in with a contract of certain things that they are here to experience, to learn. And you might think, oh, but I don't want them to learn that, or I don't want them to learn it that way. Because you're trying to, in a very kind way, right? In a very kind way, you're trying to save them from maybe some of the heartache that you experienced. So when I don't feel like I'm calling you out or judging you, because a lot of times our desire to get in the way of people's contracts actually comes from a really kind place of not wanting them to suffer in the way that you suffered maybe when you were going through that. Does that make sense? So, so how do you priestess when you're grieving? You hold the space. And what else I said to Tammy Martin, who's kind of a connected question, is try to even be, and I know this is so hard, but ultimately this is the work of the priestess, try to even be a compassionate witness of yourself. You know, sometimes I literally sit back and kind of watch myself with compassion and just kind of say to myself, I mean, not out loud because then you look nuts, you know what I mean, but in my like quiet inner voice, I have said to myself, like, I get it, girl. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this fucking sucks. I get it. You know, I almost feel like I'm my own higher self sometimes, watching myself stumble and feel challenged and feel sad, and you know what I mean? And sometimes I feel like I can hover almost above myself and just look at myself and go, fuck, I know, and I'm sorry, and this is hard. And so April is asking, what does it mean to hold space? And you'll be happy to know that Lori Valdez asked that question, and I'm going to answer it in our session today. So stay tuned, because it's a great question. You know, what does it mean to hold space? And my answer to you is going to be, there are techniques to physically hold space, and then there are techniques to energetically hold space. And those can be different practices. They can be combined practices. Some people hold space just energetically by just, you know, they know someone's having a difficult time. They focus on that person. They visualize that person. They allow a cord to be connected between themselves and that person. And then they just, you know, literally hold that person's energy in their own field, almost like a little energetic hug. Some people, when they hold space, will set up an altar for the person or the situation. I've done that before when there have been different challenging circumstances around me or in my life. So there's different ways of holding space, and it can mean really different things for different people. So that's a great question. Okay, so Tammy Martin said, I'm trying to figure out how to set boundaries with my sister who always dumps her vampiric negative energies on me. She feels better than I'm sitting here thinking about shit in her life and family that's not mine. She's the sensitive type who will cry if you tell her she's dumping. That's not the effect I'm looking for. I can try to turn the conversation to something different, and she'll continue after reprimanding me for interrupting. Those folks are just the jewels in our crown, aren't they? How to sit with her without sitting in her shit pile. There is a sort of a longer answer to that question we can fully get into today, but I think in the fullness of this year's experience in Soul Shift, we'll kind of get underneath this, because it's kind of like really having to put your arms around a big basket. This is big and this is deep. The more you set the intention, and a lot of you who are here today know this is true because you've seen it happening in your own life and you've told me as much. The more you set the intention to be in clean relationship in your life, which for me has become the priority over the last, I'd say 2 years. It's been a priority, like a priority. The more you will find that people and their behavior and the way they react to you and the way they show up to your relationship changes, because it has to, because you changed. And I didn't realize when I really started to prioritize having clean relationships, I didn't realize how many people were not going to be able to continue to be in my life. I didn't realize that was the price I was going to pay. So then I set this intention, and all of a sudden it's like people start, in my personal life primarily, just pinging off, like friends who like just all of a sudden stop calling, or all of a sudden stop engaging, or stop replying, or bing, 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 bing. And when I look back through the fullness of time at those relationships over the last 2 years, they weren't really clean. Those are people who wanted something from me, or weren't really there for me. They were there because they were getting something or because it was interesting, but not because there was a real soul exchange. And then what started to happen was a couple of new people kind of showed up, and I was like, well, that's interesting. People who, in a lot of ways, or older relationships being strengthened, people who really are there, wouldn't care whether I was Athena or my name was Bobby Joe. They're just there for me. They're not there because I can do anything for them, or because, you know what I mean? And so it's like the universe does this really interesting thing where it draws people in and it pushes people away. And I've really learned to trust that process. It even happens with family. And I'm not saying that you're going to lose your family or should you lose your family or your sister's going to go away or change or anything. I am saying if you change your frequency, people have to change the frequency to align to it. And there's the plus side to that, and there's the challenging side to that. The plus side is you're going to end up with cleaner relationships. The challenging side of it is you may not end up with all of your relationships intact. And I don't think I fully understood that. I still would have chosen to do it. Because I can tell you, this is like candid to the core, there's nobody in my life right now where I feel like it's not clean. Like there's stuff I'm not saying, or I'm holding back, or you know what I mean, or I'm kind of like helping to keep some mythology in place for them. It's like everybody kind of knows where they are and what's going on from both ways. Do you know what I mean? And so if they make a choice to be in my life, I know it's because it's aligned. And if they make a choice not to be in my life, then I also know it's not aligned. But it took me 2 years to get here. Do you know what I mean? And plenty of those people who left are still not in personal alignment. You know what I mean? I can see it. And I think the universe was like, well, if they're not going to do the work, then they have to go over here. And then the people who are doing that work can come over here. And I've seen the universe kind of create these Venn diagrams. So, how do you create clean relationships? First of all, you set the intention of clean relationships, meaning everybody in your life is aligned with your highest good. and vice versa. You're not like, again, sustaining mythologies, creating narratives, being, having false personas and stuff. You just are who you are. And everybody knows who you are, and that's how you're rolling. And the other way to clean relationship is you have to finally commit. You have to finally commit to the reality that you're not here to fix or change anyone. Everyone has their own energetic integrity, and you are here to support that, whatever it looks like. Doesn't mean you have to, show up to the party for it. Doesn't mean you have to be in relationship with it. But it does mean you have to allow everybody to have their own integrity. And then if that integrity serves your highest good, great, you can be in a relationship. If it doesn't, then you have to let that relationship go and morph and change the way it needs to. But yes, Tammy, I'm super glad you asked. Honestly, I want to thank all of you for all the questions that you sent in, because they're all beautiful. There wasn't a single question where I was like, every question led me down a really cool rabbit hole in preparing for you today. But I really think it's about deciding what you want. And some people, I guarantee you, do not want clean relationships because they cannot be fully honest. We create these really complex webs where it's like this thing over here is connected to this thing over here, is connected to this old story about yourself over here, and then these people over here don't know that you do this other thing over here, and that's okay. Again, no judgment if you're in a place where you're still caught up in some of these webs and you can't untangle it just yet. But if you have the intention to untangle it, what I have learned is the universe will help to make that process happen and sort of fast track it in a good way that serves your highest good. Yeah, honestly, it's really funny because I think part of my desire just to be in completely clean relationship was not being in clean relationships with people is exhausting. You know what I mean? And again, just reminding yourself that there are certain people in my life who I know cannot be in clean relationship. And so my relationship with them has suffered as a result. No judgment, that's where they are, but it's just not where I am. And so it's about knowing that that's a possible outcome, being in alignment with that, being willing to let go of some of those energies in service of coming into a different alignment. It's really important. Some people, in terms of their astrology, need drama. We've talked about this before. And I'm actually not kidding. There are certain astrological profiles. This came up a lot in Soul Shift last year because we talked about some of these types. Some people really, it's almost like they feed on it. It's a source of energy for some people. Those are not relationships I can maintain because I find it energetically draining and exhausting. But those people, I will tell you, will find each other. If you let them go, like I've let some go in my life over the years, they find each other and then they can go have Drama Town and they all like it and they enjoy it. They feed off of it. They get excited about it. You know what I mean? I just physically can't do it. I find it toxic, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And so I'm not someone who hosts it, but there are people who really do desire it and find it, interesting. And it doesn't matter where it is. They like drama in the news. They like drama in social media. They like a little bit of turbulence, even if it involves like personal judgments and attacks and like all of that. They're down for that. And like I said, no judgment. It's just for me personally, it's something that even my immune system like can't sustain it. It's too much for me energetically. So anyway, to each his own, I will say. Lynn's Pittman said, so I'm hoping that you can give me some clarity on the whole what kind of elemental priestess you are thing. I'm a Sag and have a couple more planets in fire, but then I also have a ridiculous amount of Capricorn all over my chart, plus Taurus ascendant, North Node Virgo. When I took the quiz, I was fire all the way with air wings, but I would like to be able to embody more of this earth energy that apparently is part of me. I don't seem to be connected to it at all. I feel like if I could balance this fire and earth in my chart, I could feel more whole and integrated, and that maybe I can more easily be me and get where I so long to go. But the earth stuff just doesn't come that naturally to me. So this was one of the questions. There were a couple of them where I thought, I think your answer's in the question. You need to go back through all of those worksheets and look at the earth priestess medicine and sit with it. I mean, at the end of the day, the goal is integration of all of the elements, right? Like I'm heavy, heavy, heavy fire. Secondary is, you know, air and earth, and then far, far, far forth is water. But the goal is balance. And the universe, if you're not balancing yourself and getting those elements in alignment on your own, then the universe will start pulling people in and experiences in and everything to get you closer to that element. You know, I live literally on the cliffs of the Pacific Ocean. You know, I've grown up here, I've lived here all my life. And so it's like but I don't like water. I don't like to be in water. I don't like to be near water. You have to really work hard to get me to take a shower. It's just the whole thing kind of turns me off. I do a salt bath every day, but that's very like confined. So it's about balance more than anything. And I think those worksheets can really help you, you know what I mean? Figure out, so what does it look like to be an earth priestess, for example? To be very grounded, to be in those lower chakras, to be stabilized. And then if there's any resistance that comes up, because for me, it's like, I don't want to be too grounded. I don't want to be boring. I don't want to be like, I have all this earth resistance. Then you have to look at that resistance and ask yourself what that's about. You know, so what, you know, why is it that I think of earth as boring? Because I do. Why is it that I think of earth as restrictive? Because I do, you know, and then kind of journaling and meditating and setting intentions to have a different relationship with those elements is interesting, right? Like Roots of the Soul said, 0 fire in my chart, but I've always been very drawn to it. You know, and there's medicine there, is my point to you today. If you are missing an element, then that's exactly where you need to zoom in and double click, because there's something in there that the universe is trying to teach you. And then if the universe doesn't see you like upping the ante a little bit, then the universe is going to start bringing in, you know, earthy people or watery people. Or it brought me a husband who's, you know, half his chart is earth. It's like being married to a tree in all the best and worst ways, right? So it's like universe just laughs. And then my daughter's all water. Thank God my son's half fire, so he and I, you know, he's the one who gets me the most in my family. But everything else is a lesson for me. And I've learned to appreciate it. That was a great question, right? Lynette's like, I'm air resistant. Lynette's a tree. But, you know, that's also a beautiful thing. I mean, I literally can just fully lean back on my husband and rest. Because he's got me, he's got the kids, he's just got all of us. And so it's like, I have that. And there are people who would give anything to have that. You know what I mean? They've got a all fire partner who's like, let's burn it down, but isn't actually like doing anything. That's not always the best thing either, right? So anyway, okay. That was a great question too. Jody Hernandez, you touched on being held to a higher standard and not being able to get away with anything as a priestess. This spoke to me, as that has been my experience my whole life. How do you keep from getting frustrated and a bit bitter about having to bring your A game all the time, or being dragged through the coals for things that others are given grace for? Isn't that a beautiful question from Jody? I thought that was really like beautifully articulated and so true. You know, by the way, that doesn't mean that I don't make mistakes or, you know, do something wrong or shitty because I'm human and I'm mad, or I'm, you know what I mean, I'm in a restaurant and I got bad service and I complain or whatever. It doesn't mean I'm perfect, but it's almost like Spirit's got a little bit bigger of a microscope on you if you're trying to live this life. It's like, really? Because we know better. I mean, I just think that we get a little bit more of the hand slap, because it's like, no, you can't say, oh, I didn't know how energy works, I didn't know about law of reciprocity, I didn't know about, you know, like, really? You totally do know. And so, yeah, so, and don't stay there is a good response to that too. What I said in my notes to you, Jody, is this is the price we pay. And you learn to just, at least in my experience, you learn to just know it. So there'll be moments where, like, I could slip. Might be fun to slip. Might satisfy my ego to slip just a little bit, right? Once in a while, because you're human, and then you just go, But then you're wiser and you go, if I do this, then this. And if that happens, then this. And then this over here could cause that. And because you're wiser and because you do the sacred pause, right? You know about the sacred pause. Something triggers you and you stop before you react. You take at least one full deep breath. That is the sacred pause. Like, because your ego's like, ah. The sacred pause is that moment of like, and then what? And then what? And then what? And then what? Right? Play the tape through. I love that, Candace. And you go, you know what? It's not worth it. Not worth it. Whatever tiny fulfillment, my sense of humor or my ego or whatever, or my subconscious or my shadow or my whatever might get, the fallout trickle down from that energetically is an absolute shit show. Yeah, it's the saving your own job moments at Scout. And I've taught my son, he's old enough. Zoe's not old enough yet, like just sort of maturity wise. I judge my kids how ready they are for some of these spiritual lessons more by their maturity than their age. And she's just not quite there yet. She'll be there in a year or two. But I have taught my son the sacred pause. And that is because he's Aries, right? He's just like, I mean, when he gets mad, and you can see it. This last weekend in baseball, and this is relevant to our coaching, my son is an incredibly talented baseball player. He plays for a private team, and he travels and does tournaments, and he wants to be in the MLB. He's very gifted, especially as a pitcher. Well, this last weekend, though, we had a tournament, and the kids were just doing a shitty job. I mean, literally, it's like his whole team, every single play, there was some, and I could see what was happening. And he was catching, and he just got up, took off his helmet, and on the ground. And he was just pissed. I mean, he literally, and I could hear him just going, "What are you know? Like, what are you guys doing? And why did you do that? And why?" And he picked up his helmet and just boom on the ground, full Aries, right? And he looks over at the stands where Dave and I are sitting, and I'm like, and the coach benched him for the rest of the game, and they lost because he couldn't pitch, he couldn't hit, right? All the things that he's very good at. And then afterward, he lost his electronic privileges. He still doesn't have his electronics back, and that was this weekend. Because Dave was like, oh, you're not going to behave that way and embarrass your coach and, harm the team outcome because you can't control your temper. So that's all. But I'm sharing that with you because it's like sometimes you want to take your helmet off and, it's like full collie. And the universe has to take away your electronic privileges. Oh, and you know what the best part was? When we said to him, you know what, no electronics. It was a real quiet conversation. He was just like, I know. I mean, he was just like, I know. If he had, and so I'm like, what would have happened if you had taken the sacred pause? You're standing there, you're all mad, you want to get that helmet, and you're like, what's going to happen when I throw my helmet down? How's coach going to react? How's my dad going to react? How's my mom going to react, right? What's going to happen? Are we going to win this game or are we going to lose this game? Are you going to win this game or are you going to lose this game? That's held to a higher standard. And this game isn't just one conversation. This game isn't just one relationship. This game is the whole pizza. And sometimes you win the slice, but you lose the pie. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, and for what? And for what? And then afterwards, you're like Nick in the car going, I know. Because you're just so mad at yourself. You know better than what you just did. In the moment, you couldn't pause. Tabitha, I'm a middle school music teacher. God bless you. And I was wondering, how do I priestess for kids who are not my own? It's the same as really what I was sharing with Shali and Tammy and what I'll be sharing later for a few others too. It's that compassionate witness. That's how you priestess for kids who are not your own. And I mentor fifth graders. So like I'm going this Friday. It's our next session. We're doing singing bowls on Friday. I'm super excited. And it's, I'm coaching them while I'm sharing crystals and stuff, because if you just start teaching kids spiritual lessons, they tune out. But if you kind of incorporate it into what you're doing, they can hear you better. And part of it is just asking them how they're doing, what is important to them right now, how are they feeling, what are they witnessing, what are they experiencing, just inquiry, right, is the best tool with kids, in particular asking questions, because kids are honest and they want to communicate. Most kids don't have throat chakra blockages because that throat chakra doesn't develop until later in life. And so most kids are going to tell you the honest truth if you're like, what's going on? How are you feeling? Right? And then just be a witness. Because since you're not a parent, you're not responsible. So you can just say, oh, that's interesting. Every time I go, they're like, oh, I'm so stressed out and I'm so anxious and I'm so sad because my friend isn't being nice to me. And I can just witness and coach a little bit rather than, well, what's your part in that? And what could you have done differently? Like, I don't have to be the judge. Yeah, well, I have a preteen. I used to teach 7th and 8th grade English. So I've taught middle school and early high school students. Sometimes inquiry doesn't work as well with them. The skill that I developed as a 7th and 8th grade teacher that ultimately served me really well as a college professor is giving it right back. As fast as they can give it, I can give it back. And so eventually it's not interesting to them anymore. It's like, I don't want to do this. Well, I don't want to teach you right now. With a bad attitude, I wish you were in somebody else's class. But God put you here, and God put me here, and this is what we're doing. And it's like, if they give it, you gotta give it right back. It's true. So MJ had a great question too. I understand we can keep scrolling, but sometimes we can't keep the blinders on and have to stand up for what's right, or do we? This is an interesting question. I know you stated some people will never change, but how would a priestess address this? I noticed once the negativity light is switched on, all the negativity moths come out and are attracted to it. How do we convey that it is not a personal attack and we are addressing what we see at the moment in their words, post, or action, and this is an opportunity to learn and grow and not feel victimized? I await your wisdom and love. So, I wish I had my Rider-Waite deck with me. And by the way, what I'm going to say is really just my 2 cents. I'm sure if you asked everybody in the feed, everybody here would have a different opinion. And it may not be the same as mine. So I just want to put that out there. I'm not always right, but this is how I live my life. The High Priestess in the Rider-Waite tarot deck in particular is sitting between the 2 pillars, right? The black pillar and the white pillar. Things that, the absolute poles, right? Right, wrong, yes, no. She sits between them. She's not hugging the one pole and she's not, riding the other pole. She's sitting square between them. And part of it is very difficult ever, in my experience, to know what is absolutely right and what is absolutely wrong. Because most of the time, and this is what I used to teach and train when I was a coach, most of the time you have access, human beings have access to 50 to 75% of the information on a good day that they need to make the decisions in their life. There's always, by my estimation, at least 25% of any situation or dilemma or problem or even social media or anything, there's almost always at least 25% that you're not going to have access to. Even in your own life, even in your own marriage, for example. In my experience, if you're going through some challenges, sometimes there's subconscious stuff on your partner's part or lineage stuff, ancestral stuff that you don't know about. I mean, this is what, it's kind of funny. Sometimes people are like, oh, you know what? I don't need ayahuasca because I've done a lot of psychotherapy and I know everything there is to know in my subconscious. I've had people tell me that, so I'm good. I mean, if there's a dark corner, I have gotten in there with a flashlight and looked around and I know everything and I'm good. I'm integrated. And I don't judge people, but I do sit there and go, uh-huh. Because I think I'm pretty thorough in my exfoliation of my soul. And every time I go into ayahuasca, I'm like, wait, what? Like there's some like other crazy dark corner, because you can't know. I mean, I want you to just try to wrap your mind around for a second how many ancestors you have. And I've got people in my family who are really keen on family trees and stuff. So I've seen some relatively accurate stick figure drawings of like about 4 or 5 or 6 generations out. So that's why what I want to say is it's very hard for me to judge anything. Even like today's politics, if you were to ask me, honest to goodness, Athena, what do you think? I honestly, as I'm sitting in the middle of this entire swirl that our country's going through right now, I don't have a candidate that I'm really have in mind. I feel like I honestly am trying to sit in the middle, and it's just a swirl and a mess. I don't have it any more figured out than anybody else. But I definitely don't feel like I know right from wrong, or this versus that. I mean, I really feel like I'm learning through this process of even politics right now, like what it means to sit in the middle. Because I'm really trying to look at everything and have some kind of informed opinion. And it's really a swirl, right? So, to MJ's point, if you, the one thing I said in my notes, and I'm going to just read you what I wrote because it felt accurate, okay? When you feel the need, or you, not MJ, but anybody feels the need to really speak about something publicly, whether it's like, I don't know, having a meeting with your family or going in social media and posting, always interrogate your rationale. Because a lot of times when people feel the need to vocalize something, especially something that's really polarizing, a lot of times there's some ego involvement there. And it can be super subconscious. But sometimes there's an attention desiring or an attention wanting energy there. And even if it's super subconscious, that can still be very destructive. Because the reality is, and I've said this in my responses to quite a few of you about different things, the reality is you have to let go a little bit, I think, as a priestess, as a spiritual person who's trying to participate in this evolution. I think you have to let go a little bit of some of these 3D notions of what it means to communicate and express. Sometimes expressing can create odd energetic entanglements that you don't intend. Now you can say, well, maybe it's meant to be, and maybe, you know what I mean? But I see a lot of people, especially on Facebook, like express their truth, and it's really clear they're just trying to say something mobilizing or polarizing to get people to respond to whatever they're posting. Now, if that's their intention and they're conscious of it, then they have free will and they're able to do that. I just think sometimes I'm not sure if they're clear about the energetic consequences of something like that. Does that make sense? Now, if you really feel strongly about a cause or a situation and you take a targeted and a specific kind of action to remediate or to address whatever that challenge or problem is, that's different. But I think sometimes we've gone through this kind of era, and again, especially with social media, where I think people everybody's got a microphone, and everybody wants to use it. And they don't realize kind of the ego gratification that might even be very subconscious and subterranean around that. So I think I want to see people be more consciously aware of what they express and how they express it, and with what intention they do that. Does that make sense? Because she said, how do we convey that it's not a personal attack and we are addressing what we see at the moment? And it's like, if what you're going to express can be interpreted by some people as a personal attack against them, then what is your subconscious intention for expressing it? And are you aware of the full and complete energetic consequences? I don't mean that in a bad way, but like, energetic subsequent events that may unfold because you shared something with people who could interpret it as a personal attack. So maybe the sacred pause. But like, people post on Facebook about animal rights and stuff, and I think that's really great, but it's also very polarizing, and sometimes I think they do it so they get people to say, yeah, and it's like, take that energy and do some fundraising to actually support an animal rights organization. Do you know what I mean? So a lot of times I'll see this when what I think is, if you really want to make a difference, I'd like to see you take that energy, and instead of developing some post that now takes you 3 hours to sift through the cheerleading, right? Like, go somewhere and spend 3 hours raising money to support the animals that you're concerned about. But that's my personal 2 cents, if that makes sense. Okay. Now, Rhonda, kind of changing gears just a little bit, she said, I had a complete hysterectomy in my 30s, so we are going towards sort of sacral. Due to severe endometriosis. How does this affect my sacral chakra, and what are ways to work past not having that passion organ in place? Your passion organ. Well, darling, I would say that hopefully they didn't remove your best passion organ during your hysterectomy. You've got some other parts, I suspect, that might be just as fun for you, but I understand what you're saying. So that my first answer to you is keep doing the work. I just shared with you today, or am sharing with you today. I don't know if we've actually posted it yet because we were formatting it earlier. But Alexa should be sharing in the group today the February content that I wrote, the priestessing content. And it's pretty juicy. It's pretty specific. It's somewhat controversial. Just in the sense of like, I put my views out there, and for whatever it's worth, those are kind of my keys to sacral practice and healing. I was going to say, you still got plenty of passion organs, darling. What I want to say is, it's really a matter, again, of healing and of doing the work. That's why I'm teaching you the mantra. The VAM mantra is one that you can recite 108 times every day. I think it's part of this 3D thing of like, I don't have my thing, and therefore I don't have my thing. When energy is what we're talking about. We're not talking about your uterus. We're talking about energy. They didn't take your sacral chakra out. They took a physical organ out that does have a hormonal regulating function, right? But I'm sure you're probably taking hormones of some kind to regulate your hormone function outside of that. And so from my perspective, energetically, it's all there. It's all there. And so shift your perspective and continue to work the sacral medicine. And that can be essential oils, that can be crystals, that can be, the 108 iterations of the mantra. There's a sacral chakra frequency, of solfeggio frequency that you can play. Masturbate, right? Like all of the things that we talk about in terms of like really reconnecting with that energy of that part of your essence, because it's critical. And I think a lot of times we feel like if we're missing the organ, that we're missing the energy, and the chakra and the bits and pieces are from my perspective, disconnected in that way. I don't think it really matters whether you have the parts. That's right. Yeah, the energy work from Crystal Masters this month, right? Use your wand to open up, right? To send and receive that frequency. Draw the symbol on your body of the love symbol on your sacral chakra every night. Do that 5 or 6 times. You might find yourself having more fun than you intended to. Yeah. Yeah, so Danielle had a hysterectomy 5 years ago. And so I think it's partly about how you perceive and whether things are, and I'll get back to that point later because there were a couple of other questions that kind of mirrored the same concept. And I love that. Nathan's like, I don't have a womb, but I connect with my womb energy. And that's like 1,000% accurate for me. And men who don't know that, don't connect to that, don't tap into that well, are missing a huge party bonus, because womb energy is available to all of us. It's really true. And because, for those who don't have a uterus, you were carried in one. You lived in one, you grew in one, you became in one, right? And so you've had that entire uterine experience. You've had that womb experience. Doesn't matter whether you have one or ever had one or want one or whatever you got. Womb envy, right? So and you're not alone. I mean, so many people have had, for whatever reason, to have their uterus removed, and I have plenty of friends who have very active, fun sacral chakras and don't have their uterus anymore. And I will say, most of the time they're in a better mood than I am. So whatever. Maybe they're going to, get more action because they're less moody. My friends who have had hysterectomies are more a life of the party than I am half the time. Maybe it's just me, but... Okay. Tina said, I struggle with my sacral chakra ever since I gained weight that I never lost. After my second son 19 years ago, I've gotten bigger and bigger. Now I can't stand to see myself. My husband's supportive, but it's hard for me to be intimate. I don't know how to overcome this. And my note to you, sweet Tina, what I said is, it's probably why you're here, right? And a lot of the weight that we hold on to is consciously or subconsciously about whether and how we want to connect. And I've also observed that women who have C-sections, I don't know if you did, Tina, women who have C-sections tend to hold on to the baby weight a lot longer. And part of it is they don't have the normal hormonal release, right? Losing weight is as much energetic as anything else. I've had plenty of clients who literally, I was so close to them, I knew they were hardly eating anything. It wasn't like they were eating all these thousands of calories a day and that's why they weren't losing weight. It's like I've had the experience in my own life where it's like the weight just seems to want to be magnetized to you. It doesn't matter whether you reduce the calories or increase the exercise. And so the main thing I want to tell you is, and it's kind of fun too, you can experiment with this, but you have to be ready. If you're going to do what I tell you to do or advise you to do, can't tell you what to do, but what I advise you to do, you have to be ready because it happens, is invite a more vibrant and more, however you choose to think of it. My goal is never to be thin because I'm not a thin person. I'm a petite person, but I'm extremely curvy and I got a big butt. So I would never say I want to invite in a thin person, but I have invited in a more balanced, sensual, physically fit energy to come through my body. And when you do that, it's amazing. It's almost like calling in a new energy stream to be present with you. And that can help to shift your metabolism, to shift your appetite. But then you got to realize once that starts to kick in a little bit, like this new energy stream, this vibrant, alive, physically fit, sensual, connected. Because when you lose the weight, it's like you're vulnerable, right? When you call all of those things in, you got to watch, because then you're going to be like, whoa, 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 this feels unsafe. All of a sudden people can see me. I don't know if I'm ready for people to see me, right? So, because for a lot of people who've been holding on to weight for a long time, it feels so scary not to have the extra weight, because people can see you and they can touch you and they can get close to you. And there's some part of a lot of empaths who are like, nope, nope, nope. They're not going to hurt me. They're not going to see me. They're not going to touch me. And so they keep the padding. Do you know what I mean? And so when you're ready, and right now would be a great time to do it, because we're, kind of coming out of this new moon window and we're moving into a waxing moon. So it's a good time to call in new energy streams. We're not in a waning moon, but you can call it in and say, I want to call in my highest vibrational, sensual, physically fit, strong, beautiful self to emerge through this body. And I call her in from all dimensions and across all timelines. And as I bring her in, I release this excess weight with gratitude, because for whatever reason, excess weight has served you. May not be serving you now, but it served you at some time, and we have to love ourselves wherever we are. The worst thing is when you go, no, I want this off and it's gross and I don't want to. It's like, this is your beautiful body. It has served you so well, and it hasn't asked for all that much in return. So it's about really honoring and accepting where you are, and then kind of deciding what do you want to bring in, and what does she look like? What does he look like? This new, right? And I had to do the same thing, because after I had Zoe, I had two kids in 2 years, and I gained almost 100 pounds with each pregnancy. And I'm a really teeny person, but I had Graves' disease and other things going on, thyroid issues when I was pregnant with Zoe. So I was actually heavier than I am now before I got pregnant with my kids. I'm in better shape now than I was before I had children, which is, something to say. But I've had to really work at that too. And again, I'm not like a thin person, but I'm in pretty good physical shape. But I had to, after I had Zoe, I had a hard time getting the weight off. I'd had a C-section. Again, it was like almost 100 pounds of weight, and it's just like, and I was tired. And it's like, what am I calling in? And I had to shed her, almost like skin, like a literal bag of skin. I feel like I left her somewhere. And I had to, for whatever this was to emerge. And I'm glad I did it, but it wasn't easy. But it had to be a conscious intention. And I had to be willing to say goodbye to her. Does that help? Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was about either was I like 199 or 200 or 201 the day I delivered Zoe. And, that's not good. I'm 5'1.5", right? So, and to gain all that weight in such a short period of time, to gain all that weight in 6 months was hard on my heart. You know what I mean? It just wasn't a good physical situation. But you can do it. If you want to get that weight off, you can do it. But it's a process, and you have to recognize, I was thick, and I still thought I was sexy. I had bigger boobs. I still thought I was really cute. I was cute. But I wasn't comfortable. It wasn't, I was like going up and down stairs, like it wasn't physically healthy for me at the time, and I knew it. So hopefully that's helpful. Angelica said, I read the sheet and I'm wondering what kind of things I can do to work with an overactive or blocked sacral chakra. There are suggestions for activating, but I'm really not understanding what I can do to lower its activation or blockage. I love that you guys can go with the flow of these conversations, because we end up talking about like literally everything under the sun. You gotta love yourself where you are at any phase or stage. So what I said to Angelica about this is, remember, so if your sacral chakra is overactive, which that can be fun. That can feel sexy, and that can feel polygamous. That can feel like all kinds of things. If your sacral chakra is overactive, the goal isn't to like take it to the other side of the spectrum and like shut it down. The goal, whether you're underactive or overactive, is balance. You want to be somewhere in the middle with that sacral chakra. You don't want it overactive, which usually leads to too much of an indulgent sexual appetite. It can be like sort of a manic creatives have an overactive sacral chakra. Sometimes you'll see musicians who like will stay up for 2, 3, 4 days at a time, right? The manic creatives usually have overactive sacral. So in any case, my point to you is, whether you're over here or over here, not creative at all, staying up 3 days in a row to record your music, the goal is somewhere in the middle. Whether you want to have sex every 10 minutes or you haven't wanted to have sex in 10 years, the goal is to bring all of that somewhere back in the middle. Yeah, so it's just about balance. MJ, similar question from earlier. MJ asked, our sacral chakra connects to our gallbladder, so what if your gallbladder was removed? Does that leave a hole in your energy field? So hopefully I kind of responded to that earlier by saying, even if you had an organ removed, the energy isn't removed. If you think about it, your soul animates your body. One day when your body doesn't exist anymore, your soul continues. So there's an absolute complete integrity to the essence of who you are that is not contingent upon you having any physical organs. And that's what I want you to remember. Like, this is very important. So yeah, Jody's asking, does menopause fit in all of this? So what happens during menopause is you lose estrogen, right? And so then your body sort of goes into this free fall, which is kind of where I am right now. But you have to be careful, because if you start taking estrogen and you don't calibrate your levels, you can get yourself into a lot of physical problems. But again, that's very much, again, about finding balance. Helping your body in different ways to find its way back to a center point. You don't want to be too far on one end, and you don't want to be too far on the other. And Daimichi asked, if you don't want kids, does that have to do with the sacral? Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. It's a contractual thing. Some people are just not here to have children, and they know it. They've known it all along. And one of the things that kind of bothers me is I feel like those people get kind of judged or shamed in our society. And certainly culturally, like in Greek culture, if you don't have kids, it's like, is something wrong? Like, are you not able to have kids? Versus like, no, I made a very conscious life choice not to have children, which for a lot of people is actually the right choice. And I've always admired people who just know. That is not what they're here for, because they don't struggle with the decision, and they don't feel quite as subject to, what I see as very judgmental social norms. Yeah, it'll happen, and my friends are like, no, no, it won't, which I always love. So Dawn Armijo asked about, she said, we've spoken before about how your chart, I'm going to go, by the way, for another 10 minutes or so, if that's okay, just because I feel called to, and then I will record the answers to the rest of the questions in the morning. She said, we've spoken before about how your chart has many layers and you're never just a Virgo, but I am the wateriest earth fire I know, and I'd like to discuss how we change based on our evolution. And she was also asking for some resources to have handy when people are asking her about crystals and herbs. The main thing to know, and this is a kind of an answer to a number of your questions that came up, you are never just your astrology, right? I mean, I'm not just a Leo, you're not just a whatever you are. And this is what I was referring to earlier. Most of what you are is your lineage. Your soul lineage and your material lineage, your physical DNA, and the ancestral blessings and challenges that you've inherited by virtue of being in your ancestral line. And so there's this amalgam, right? There's this calculus of who you are. And your astrology is over here, it's definitely one part of it, but you are also the sum of all of the energies and the lifetimes and the iterations of your lineage that have led to you being here, right? And so all of that watery earth fire and where all that water's coming from, I've mentioned this many times, I'm prone to sorrow. And I'm not a sad person, but there will be times where if I start crying, I can't stop crying, and I know it's not mine. But I also come from a lot of pain. And I know it's lineage stuff. I know it's like me still weeping for the children they lost and the land that they lost and you know what I mean? Sometimes it wells up, and then it's just I can't stop crying. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's like torrents, right? And I can feel how not mine it is, but then part of me is I don't want to resist it, so I kind of just try to let the waterworks happen. You are the result of a lot of love, but you're also the result of a lot of pain. And that's why I said earlier, for people who are like, no, I'm good, you know what I mean? I've done a lot of therapy, thank you so much, but I'm all fixed up. And I'm always like, you have no idea what's in your ancestral treasure box. I very highly doubt any of us will get to the bottom of it in this lifetime. I think you're shown these little oh, look at this, and look at this, and look at this, so that you can kind of put the pieces together, but... And then some people are all fire in their chart, but they're so grounded, so conservative, and it's lineage stuff. They wouldn't know how to light a passionate fire if I set them on fire myself, right? Because they're like, oh no, I couldn't, and that's not, it's like it's lineage stuff that comes up. Resist, resist, resist. Got to put that in the box, right? It can come through. Water can come through in so many different ways. It can come through a literal physical desire to be near water or away from water, right? It can come through tears. It can come through as being a healer, or because healers are watery folks. Water can also show up in your life through prosperity, which is a water element energy. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? We hang on to astrology because we can quantify it, and it sounds scientific, and I can't quantify your ancestral stuff. I can't say, well, you're 20% this grandmother over here, and then you're 3% that crazy lady over there. Like, I can't line it up and give you a natal chart for your lineage. And so because that's so amorphous and kind of multidimensional and difficult to access, we kind of hang on to astrology because it makes more sense. Crystal Smith Freeman, after doing worksheets and journal entry, I've come to the conclusion that my sacral chakra is blocked. She's gone back to my ultimate guide to chakras for some help. And I was talking about trauma from medical procedures, which we've talked about today. She said, I was also in active labor for 24 hours before my C-section, which I was too. So I thought back to when my lack of spark first started. It was about the time my daughter was born. I related the lack of spark to being an exhausted mom. Now I know my lack of spark is also related to sacral trauma. What are the most effective ways to begin to heal and bring balance back to the sacral? And this is what I wanted to, first of all, be sure you read the worksheets for this month. You have them now, and so take a few minutes to go back and read them. If you've got sacral trauma, I really think you're going to resonate with what I shared with you there. The main thing I want to say is, remember that it's very hard on your body to have a C-section. And because we don't talk about, postpartum depression in our society, because it looks like most new moms are happy. That's what the brochure looks like. They're all happy. But women who have C-sections, because they cut, your hormone levels, instead of like trailing off after a normal delivery, your hormone levels just tank. And that isn't well treated in the obstetric field. There really isn't a lot of care for the hormonal levels afterward, or any kind of effort that I've seen anyway, in my own experience or anyone else I know, to kind of mitigate that. So it's really about recognizing that you may have some extra work to do, right? Just as anybody who's had trauma to the sacral region does. But what I want to remind you today is there's nothing that has ever or will ever happen to your sacral chakra that can't be healed. There just isn't. And I've had clients who are like, you know what, Athena, I know you say that, but I'm going to be the one person who can't heal my sacral because my issues are so bad, or I had, multiple abortions, or whatever the unforgivable thing they think. And in my experience, there isn't anybody with sacral trauma that cannot heal it. Healing is not a process, it's a decision. And it's an energy. And the ultimate core of it, which is why we've got a society full of people who have autoimmune disease, is that we have to stop fighting ourselves, hating ourselves, blaming ourselves, thinking terrible thoughts about ourselves, telling us ourselves terrible things all the time about how not good we are or how many mistakes we've made. All of that has to stop, because your body, to quote the book, right, keeps the score of all of those times when you just tear yourself in half for what you've done and what you said and what and it's like, the minute you begin to release some of that guilt and some of that shame and some of that whatever it is that's going on there, that's the ultimate moment when your body begins to repair itself and heal. And like I said, I will say this to you 100%. You will never tell me anything that will surprise me. The one thing I really can tell you, I am that friend. Somebody has one-upped you. I literally believe, the universe may prove me wrong, that I have seen and heard it all. So you could tell me any number of just things where you're like, I'll never be able to forgive myself. And I will be the one person looking at you and going, You can still be healed. Sorry, but you're not the one person who can't. There's still somebody out there who thinks they're a little bit less healable than you are. Not to make fun, but you know what I mean? I won't judge you. You won't surprise me. I am that friend where you can be like, really? And it's like, yeah. But that's because of the work that I do. I try to create space for people to be honest about the core of their experiences, and I can hold a container for that. I'm not responsible for your behavior. I think that's the other part of it, and you have to go through your life like that too. Like, you can tell me anything because I'm not sitting here thinking I'm responsible for it. I can just witness it and like let it move through, right? Well, and Dasha's asking about what do you do when you have someone in your life who's extremely ill? Yeah, you hold the space. You're not there to fix or change it. And sometimes, you know, I've really learned this to be true. Most of the time, and I don't know if it's so gendered, I think men and women really both want to be witnessed, but most of the time people don't want you to solve their problems, and they don't have the expectation that you're going to. People just want to be seen and to be witnessed and to know that somebody actually gives a shit. Don't you think? I mean, I rarely have people come to me and go, please help me solve this huge problem that I know you can't solve. But people want someone to know what's going on, and they want someone to say, I'll sit next to you by that fire. I can't fix it, but I won't leave you alone by that fire. And that is the most valuable, beautiful, imperfectly perfect response. And it's also the same response, and feel loved anyway, right? It's people are carrying around, and you should know this as a healer and a priestess, people are carrying around stuff in their heart that's really heavy for them. And, you know, I'm very lucky and you're very lucky because we have a place, we have each other. I feel capable of expressing in my life those heavy things on my heart, but some people really don't. And those things are like 20-pound weights that they carry around. And they would give literally anything just to be able to say, this is what I've got, or this is what I'm struggling with, or this is what I can't forgive myself for. And like, it's just the articulation that heals more than anything. So you're not here to fix or change, but you can sit by that fire without taking it on and without, you know, becoming codependent. Codependence comes from you thinking or them believing that you can fix it when you know you can't. That's when things become unclean. So Ladina and Crystal Enriquez and Morgan Fitzgerald all talked about plant medicine journeys. So I wanted to speak to that for a minute. They're asking, what do I recommend and how do you get access to it? The main thing I would tell you is that most of the hallucinogenic plant medicines like ayahuasca and to a certain extent San Pedro and some of the others that a lot of us love and appreciate are classified substances. And so no one, including me, can tell you where to go and get it because we would be endangering the people who do that work. It's kind of the sucky thing. In the 60s and 70s, people in charge of that in our country, I think, made some really backward wrong decisions about what a dangerous substance is and is not. I consider opioids to be much scarier. But nonetheless, that's what happened, and so we now live in a day and a time, although things are changing and certain states are, you know, kind of shifting legislation, and I do think in my lifetime certain Schedule I substances will probably become legalized. First, you know, under controlled circumstances, which is fine, if that's how it needs to be. What I will tell you, and Morgan specifically asked about the symbols, the Angela Foe symbols, so I wanted to speak to that a little bit more. What I have found, though, is if you set an intention that you want to work with plant medicine, it's very interesting, but I think of it as like a snake. It'll find you when the time is right. All of a sudden it'll come up weirdly in a conversation, and it's like, really? It kind of, it waits. I know that's a weird, elusive answer, but it's really true in my experience. Yeah, and it's legal in other countries, so you can always travel. My main thing is, I'm not your average bear. I don't like to do plant medicine in a big group of people. That's not my jam. The way I do it alone, and so I don't like to be in a big group. And a lot of the, the big kind of like touristy type of groups that go into Central and South America, it's like big groups, and I don't always know what kind of container those people hold, so I don't have a place to refer you where it's like, oh, that's definitely the place to go. But it'll find you. And the right person to hold the space for you will find you too. Okay. So Morgan was asking about the symbols, the Angela Fos symbols. So I was in ayahuasca ceremony in October, and I had this whole experience with my grandmother that I shared after that journey was over with you guys here in Soul Shift. And my grandmother sort of was in the room, and her name was Fo Tini. And in the journey, my spirit guides were showing me her name, and then they took the Tine and put Angelo and then S on the end to the word. And so Fo Tini shifted into this word, Angela Fos. And I know enough Greek. I'm not perfectly fluent, but I know enough Greek that I was like, oh, because her name is the light of God, and Angelo is angels, and Fos is light. So I'm watching this kind of happen in my journey, and I'm like, oh, the light must be the light of angels. And then one by one, it was like a slideshow, which sometimes happens in journey. Like, it's almost like watching a movie, and then like the slides will come through. And one by one, it was the symbols that we've been working through so far this year. And what she shared with me, because I was trying to understand what it was really, really interesting. And so I asked out loud, I'm like, so is this a system? Is this, and I asked, is it like Reiki? And the answer that I got back is that these symbols, and that's why I keep teaching you how to draw them and encourage you to like anoint with them on your skin or draw them on paper or activate them, is that each one of those symbols has its own energy field that it kind of envelops you in over the course of the month. And the more you look at it, the more you draw it, the more you experience it, the more you trace it on the floor and go and sit inside of it, the more that frequency of that symbol will start to activate within you. And it's people who have been working a lot with the symbols since we started have talked about having this kind of experience where they feel that frequency of love this month, for example, and love in all its forms. And so it depends on if you're a sort of a symbolic person or not. I love symbols because that is the most ancient language. We've been a symbolic species since the beginning of our evolution. And I resonate with symbols. I dream in symbols sometimes. And so one by one, I got the 12. And it had this whole vibrational field around it. And so that's when I visualized these quartz like pillars, which is why you have one in each one of your kits each month, and then this illuminated kind of vibrating tray. If I could, I would make it big enough for you to sit inside where they're all lit up and like all 12 of those energy streams are activated. Kind of like a spaceship that would take you back to the mother planet. So I'm really glad you asked because it's a really, really powerful experience. I'm glad. So you've been drawing it and you've been working with it. That's exactly what that system is. So a couple of other quick questions, and then I will let you go for today. And like I said, whatever questions I don't get to when I'm live, if you're new, I do a little audio follow-up, like a part 2. And that's just optional at your leisure. You can go back and listen. Or if you have a question that didn't get answered from the sheets, then that's the place to go and make sure that you get your answer. Priscilla asked, January's grid, dismantle or not? Same question for February's grid. Can you please explain? It's up to you. January's grid has not been taken down in the Soul Shift classroom. But it's the illumination grid, and I haven't wanted to let that energy go yet, candidly. So I suspect I'll probably have our illumination grid set up here in the classroom for quite some time. But if you're the kind of person that likes to dot their I's and cross their T's, you can always take it down at the end of the month if you don't want to maintain it. And we talked about how to deactivate a grid during that class, in case you want to go back and refresh on that. Andrea asks, is there anything we can do with crystal healing for clients who are online only? And we're going to talk more about this in Crystal Masters as we go through the year. Some people call that remote healing or distance healing, virtual healing, and there's a lot of different ways to do it. What I like to do when I'm working with somebody is have a proxy in the room. And you can even use a quartz point as your proxy, meaning that you do crystal healing work on the crystal or on the wand or on the quartz point as if it is the body of the person that you're doing the remote healing for. And then you can sweep the field, so you have to set an intention that this crystal will vibrate at the same frequency as the person that you're healing. And then you can sweep the field of that crystal, sense the hot spots, even though the person is not anywhere near where you're working. It helps you to call their energy in to be present with you. As with all things magical, that requires permission. You don't want to be calling people's energy into your space and working in their energy field if you haven't been explicitly asked to do that. That is not something I do without express permission. Yeah, it's very much sympathetic magic. That's exactly right, Danielle. That's another phrase or name that people will give to this kind of remote proxy healing work. I'm glad that's helpful. Yeah, you could. Like a Reiki teddy bear, you totally can. You can use a teddy bear. I mean, I always prefer to work with an energetic tool. However, sometimes stuffed animals, especially if they have a resonance, can be energetic tools. You know, I always think of, what's the story about the Velveteen Rabbit? I do think that our love for things can make them real. I've experienced that in my own life. That's a great question. And then Sheila asked about pendulums. Is there a proper protocol for using them, such as a prayer, or maybe times when they shouldn't be used? And then I'll get to the rest of the questions later. So just a reminder, by the way, that we did put those really cool Merkaba pendants or pendulums at Sage Goddess. There aren't a lot of these, but I brought them back from Tucson, and they have a little spinning Merkaba inside of them. So if you want that, your code is FIRE18, I think, and then there's a little enter to win that I'll put up in our Facebook group in just a minute. So pendulums are my favorite, truly my favorite tool for divination. I use mine all the time. As you know, this one really does seem to be mine. I need to keep this one. They're really good to use over the body during crystal healing too, moving from chakra to chakra. And you can just watch the movement of the pendulum to tell where you need to begin your session maybe, or where you need to focus your healing work in that session. You can also put the pendulum over an area of the body and ask if there's any illness or disease in that area. And it's like this one's saying no, which is great. But, you know, and so you can actually go into the field and ask questions and douse through the field over your client or over yourself. And you don't have to articulate every question. You don't have to walk the person through it. But you can be, it's almost like I think of my pendulum as a gut check. It's an accuracy check. So if I'm feeling like I need to begin this person's energy work over the heart chakra, but then I come in and the pendulum's like, no, then I'll kind of move until it kind of finds its groove a little bit. So that was a great question. If you don't have a pendulum, that's a good one in the shop. But actually, this is the only pendulum I've ever seen that has natural citrine on it. Isn't that cool? It has rainbow moonstone and natural citrine. So these are at sagegoddess.com if you would like. And then right now, after I log off, I'm going to go post this Scolasite perfume bottle, and this will be an enter to win for you guys for any purchases today or tomorrow. And then Alexis and I will come in and announce the winner on Thursday. Did you guys enjoy today? I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, you can let your pendulum pick a card in a spread of cards. I think that's a great way to do that too. There's almost no limit to how you can work with your pendulum. And in my experience, the relationship gets a little more strong every time you work with it. So once you get a pendulum, stay with it for a little while. I know people who like get so excited and they just keep switching back and forth, but like my pendulum, my one that I always use with you guys for the readings, like really knows me, and I know it too. And so that's how you come to really trust it as a gut check. Is you and I can even tell when it's like when it's iffy on something or like kind of doesn't want to answer a question, I can tell that too. It's just interesting how you get to be able to read it. So tonight's bonus class is about half an hour. It's very short. We're just activating and talking about activating priestess energy tonight. So this is a special little, tonight's bonus class is optional. It's a special little gift for those of you who bought that particular grid, just so that you have a little more insight about how to work with your tools. So I will see you for that, I believe, in half an hour. Is that right, Alexis? We're 5 p.m. Pacific time for our bonus. You're very welcome. So I'm picking up, by the way, in our audio with Jen Bradshaw. And her question is about using the sacrament from the Imbolc ceremony. By the way, don't forget, if you want it, we're having a private soul shift Nowruz ceremony. It's the Persian New Year. And so the perfume, if you want that, it's probably a good idea to get that in the next week or so to make sure, unless you're international, then I would shop a little bit sooner for it. If you want it, it's optional. And then there's a list in the listing of the other things you're going to want to gather. It's like an apple and some honey and some wheatgrass. So if you want to do the whole shebang with me, there's a couple of easy to access ingredients that you'll want to bring to create your own haft scene, which is the Persian New Year altar. So the perfume just has the energy of those 7. I made it as an offering for that ceremony, and then everything else is something that you can bring on your own. It's going to be fun. We've never done Nowruz ceremony before. I'm really excited to introduce it to you. I think it's super magical. So, and it certainly sets the tone, because it's the Persian New Year, it sort of sets the tone for the 7 blessings that you want to call in for the rest of 2020. So I think that'll be a fun exercise for us. So the perfume is called Haft Sin, which means the 7 S's in Farsi, which is the Persian language. So it's Haftin, Haft Sin, and it has 7 oils in it that align to each one of the 7 blessings in the Persian New Year. So you can just use the perfume for the ceremony, or you can use the perfume and bring your own stuff, or you can just bring your own stuff. But I wanted to make sure you knew that was there, because when we get together next month, you're going to be like, wait, there's a perfume? Things move so fast around here. It's like sometimes just like making sure that you know what's happening is important too. All right, cool. All right, you guys. So I will see you in the next class, which is half an hour from now. I'll see you soon.